Did you know that your life is often a reflection of your thoughts? Therefore, you can't have a positive life with a negative thought life. And today we will speak about defeating your negative thoughts. So, what comes into our minds comes out in our life. And God gives us tools to manage our thoughts in a way that can be life giving to us. Listen to 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3 to 5. It says, For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. In this series called Winning the War in Your Mind, we spoke about how our brain has neural pathways. Every time we think a thought, it builds a little path that gets strengthened when we think that thought again. And after a while, it becomes almost a default setting of thinking or thinking patterns that forms in our mind. And there's something called cognitive biases. It's basically a mental filter. These patterns of thought that shapes your reality after a while. So everything that you go through, everything that you see, everything that you experience goes through this filter of thinking that shapes reality for you. So for example, if you grew up in circumstances where there was a lot of abusive men, for example, you might create a mental bias or a cognitive filter in your mind of default setting of viewing all men like that or not trusting men initially. Or if your parents, for example, maybe regularly spoke negatively about rich people, and you are in a space where you are making a lot of money, you might feel guilty because there was a thought pattern, a bias that formed in your mind, putting rich people into a negative reality for you, a negative box in your mind. And we can challenge these mental biases, these mental filters. God gives us a way to do this. That is why also people can look at the same situation and view it differently. It's the basic glass half empty, glass half full principle. The same facts can present itself to two people and they can perceive it and experience it differently. So we can reframe our thoughts, our perspective, this filter in our minds that forms. We can reframe it. We are not victims of our thought life. We can give new meaning to the circumstances that we are in by consciously bringing that reality, bringing our thoughts under the lordship of God, because we are not waging war with earthly weapons. We have divine weapons that can bring down even the strongest thought patterns, strongholds, and biases. Let's consider Paul's example in Romans. When he went to Rome, he writes in Philippians 1, verse 12 to 13, he is chained up in jail. So just context quickly. Paul really wanted to go to Rome to preach the gospel. It was such a strategic place for everyone that goes through there. If they can meet Jesus and start following Jesus, the gospel will spread quicker to more places. But when Paul got to Rome, he couldn't preach the gospel to a lot of people. He was captured and put into prison. So he had a lot of reason to think really negatively about his situation or to be discouraged. But that's not what we see in Philippians 1 when he writes, "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ." You see, he could have been discouraged, made this very negative moment for him, but he changed meaning. He saw what God was actually doing through his difficult circumstances. He goes further and he says, "Because of my chains, Most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. He gave new meaning to his circumstances. And so reframing our reality, but then there's also the principle or the tool of pre-framing, which actually means deciding beforehand how you intend to view different situations. For example, waking up in the morning and thinking, this is going to be the worst day because I have so much to do and so little time, and I don't like the people that I'm doing it with, and it's going to be the worst. That is one way to approach a day. Pre-framing will be, I choose to see this day differently. There will be challenges, but I have God with me. There will be difficult people, but that is a chance for me to grow and to love well. And therefore, this day might be challenging, but I'm excited to see what God will do in me and through me. So we decide beforehand how you will perceive this day, pre-framing. So cognitive reframing and cognitive pre-framing is deciding what you want to, the meaning you want to give to your circumstances and seeing it that way and therefore experiencing it differently. But in Jesus, we can actually allow him into our thought world to the level that he helps us give meaning to our circumstances. And the powerful thing that happens then is we don't interpret God through our circumstances. We don't see him and determine his character through what is happening to us. Our life is difficult. I'm going through bad things, so therefore God must be far away. Allowing God into our thought worlds means interpreting my circumstances through the goodness of God. Because God is good, I can find good things in any situation. Because God is good, I am free to learn and grow and love even in difficult times. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you see it and how you frame it. And that is the invitation to each and every one of us today, to allow God to shape our framework, our default setting, the way we view our world, so that we can interpret our circumstances through the goodness of God. And maybe today you can think about how to start implementing this in your life, allowing gratefulness and thankfulness and the goodness of God to determine how we see our world, how we see everything that happens to us, and how we think about it. If you enjoyed this content, you are so welcome to subscribe to our channel.